Namaste and welcome to Daily News Simplified, the what, why, and how of newspaper reading. Today, we would be analyzing the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper of 13th of August 2018. Now let us begin.
Now we have taken this article from page 7. Now what this article talks about is a small satellite launch vehicle. Now the small satellite launch vehicle would be an on-demand rocket for launching small satellites. And by small satellites, it means satellites which weigh around 500 to 700 kg. Wherein the current satellites that are launched by India under its PSLV or the Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle weigh around 300 tons. Wherein the purpose of this small satellite launch vehicle would be to offer launches for the private sector. And it is expected that a launch through the small satellite launch vehicles would be of the 10% of the cost of the launch through PSLV. And this small satellite launch vehicle would be autonomous in nature, would have the ability to adapt to different launch situations. Now this small satellite launch vehicle is required is firstly because there has been an increase in the small satellite industry. And the reason there has been an increase in the small satellite industry is because of the use of nanotechnology to form small satellites. And the second reason as to why a small satellite launch vehicle is required is because currently nanosats or small satellites are dependent on ride sharing with bigger satellites. And because small satellites are dependent on ride sharing with launches of large satellites, it increases their cost and time delays in launches. So now hopefully up till here you've understood that small satellite launch vehicles are on-demand rocket for launching small satellites. Wherein by small satellites, it means satellites which weigh around 500 to 700 kg. Wherein those satellites which are launched by the PSLV launch vehicles roughly weigh around 300 tons. And these small satellite launch vehicles would be offered for the private sector. Wherein the cost of launching a small satellite through the small satellite launch vehicle would be roughly around 10% of the cost of launching through a PSLV or a polar satellite launch vehicle. And this small satellite launch vehicle would be autonomous in nature and would be capable of adapting to different launch requirements. And the reason ISRO requires a small satellite launch vehicle is because there has been an increase in the small satellite industry due to the progress made in nanotechnology to form smaller satellites. Wherein currently smaller satellites are dependent on ride sharing with the launches of the larger satellites. And because of this, it increases the cost of the small satellites and moreover increases the time delay in launching of a small satellite. Now you have to understand that this news is currently in transition, wherein a person from ISRO has announced that ISRO might be forming a small satellite launch vehicle and we'll have to wait and see on how the Indian Space Research Organization moves forward with this idea. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this data point from page 9. Now what this data point provides is on how the corporate social responsibility expenditure has been spent in India. Now the first thing that we'll try to understand from this is first what is corporate social responsibility, and then we'll try to understand the information that has been given in the data point. Now in simple terms, CSR or corporate social responsibility are corporate initiatives towards the environment and social welfare. Now, corporate social responsibility in India is provided under Section 135 of the Companies Act of 2013. Moreover, various provisions of corporate social responsibility are further provided in the Corporate Social Responsibility Rules of 2014. Now, as per Section 135 of the Companies Act of 2013, the CSR expenditure by companies needs to be 2% of the net profits of that company in the last 3 years. Now, this corporate social responsibility is not applied to every company, and Section 135 of the Companies Act of 2013 has various parameters on which corporate would CSR be applied to. Now, corporate social responsibility is applied on companies which have a net worth of 500 crores or more, or a turnover of rupees 1000 crore or more, or a net profit of rupees 5 crore or more. Now hopefully up till here you've understood as to what is corporate social responsibility. Now in simple terms, corporate social responsibility means the various corporate initiatives that are targeted towards the environment and social welfare. Now corporate social responsibility in India is provided under Section 135 of the Companies Act of 2013. And moreover, various rules of corporate social responsibility in India is further provided under the CSR rules of 2014. Now, under the Companies Act of 2013, the CSR expenditure of a company or a corporate needs to be of 2% of its net profit of last 3 years. However, CSR in India is not applied to every corporate or company, wherein the various parameters on which CSR is applied in India is that a company or a corporate needs to have a net worth of 500 crores or more, or it has a turnover of rupees 1000 crore or more, or it has a net profit of rupees 5 crore or more. Now, according to this data point, the maximum CSR is being spent on education and differently abled, and after that, the maximum expenditure is being spent on health, hunger, poverty, and sanitation, wherein these two aspects have taken in more than 60% of the total CSR. Wherein questions have been previously asked in your UPSC mains examination, wherein the first question was asked in GS paper 3 of 2013, which had asked the implications and the challenges with regards to CSR, while the second question was asked in GS paper 4 in the ethics section in 2017. And within that aspect, CSR also becomes important with regards to your prelims examination, wherein a question for your practice is with regards to corporate social responsibility. Consider the following statement, wherein the first statement states that it is applicable on all companies registered under the Companies Act of 2013, wherein you know the CSR is not applicable on all companies and there are various conditions with regards to the profit, net worth, or turnover of the company under which CSR becomes applicable on a company, and therefore the statement 1 is incorrect. The second statement states that it intends for corporate initiatives towards environment and social welfare, and statement 2 is correct, while the third statement states that CSR expenditure has been highest in the field of environment and slum area development, and you know that roughly 60% of CSR expenditure goes into the social welfare in the field of education and health, and therefore statement 3 is incorrect, and so the correct answer would be C, 2 only. So now hopefully you've understood as to what is CSR and the current expenditure of CSR. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from page 11. Now what this article talks about is that there has been a rise in drug abuse among women in Punjab. Now the article has highlighted various concerns with regards to this problem. Now according to the article, the women are not seeking help with regards to their drug abuse problem. And according to the article, the reasons that the women are not seeking help for their drug problems is first because of social stigma, wherein women are unwilling to come forward with their drug problems, wherein their drug problems would be looked down upon from their family, their neighbors, and other parts of the society. And because of this social stigma from society, women are unwilling to seek help for their drug problems. The second reason given in the article is state of denial, wherein state of denial is a psychological position in which a person does not consider that they have a problem, which means that women are not willing to understand that they have a drug abuse problem. And because they do not believe that they have a problem, they're not willing or looking for help. And the third and the final reason given in the article is the lack of drug rehabilitation facilities for women, wherein according to the article, there is only one drug rehabilitation facility in Punjab that is targeted only for women. And because of this lack of drug rehabilitation programs or facilities for women, women are not coming forward in seeking help. So now hopefully up till here you have understood the focus of this article, wherein there has been an increase in drug abuse among women in Punjab. And according to the article, the women are not seeking help with regards to this drug abuse problem. And this is because firstly, women drug abusers fear the social stigma that may arise from the society, wherein their family, their neighbors, and other parts of the society would look down upon them as being drug abusers. The second problem highlighted in the article is that there is a state of denial among women drug abusers, where they are unwilling to understand that they have a problem of drug abuse. And because they consider that they do not have a problem of drug abuse, they are not seeking or looking for help. And the third and the last problem given in the article is that there is a lack of drug rehabilitation facilities that are targeted towards women, wherein according to the article there is only one drug rehabilitation facility in Punjab which is located in Kapurthala that is targeted towards women. And because of this lack of drug rehabilitation facilities, the women are not coming forward with regards to seeking help. Now you have to understand that this article focuses on a very small aspect of the drug abuse problem in India, wherein this article focuses on the aspect that women are not seeking help for their drug abuse problems and highlights the reason for doing so. And hopefully you have understood the various reasons as to why women are not seeking help for their drug abuse problems in Punjab. Now with regards to your UPSC syllabus, now this article and the explanation given in this section would be placed in GS paper 2 within the section Social Justice, wherein this article highlights issues relating to the development and management of issues relating to health such as drug rehabilitation, and within this aspect drug rehabilitation for women. And apart from this article also marginally focuses on vulnerable sections, but it does not highlight any form of welfare schemes that has been undertaken by center or states to help women who are not seeking help for their drug abuse problems. And therefore, you should understand this article from a very specific aspect as to the reasons why women are not seeking help for their drug abuse problems in Punjab. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from the editorial page on page 9. Now what this article talks about, wherein this article provides various concerns with regard to poor interstate migrants, wherein the author points out that interstate migrants, especially those that have migrated from rural to urban areas, face various threats which are similar to refugees, where interstate migrants are people who leave their native places of residence to settle in more developed areas, and they leave their native place of residence to developed areas in search of better employment opportunities and higher standard of living. Wherein, according to the author, the first vulnerability that poor interstate migrants face in urban areas is the indifference from government, wherein migrant workers are neglected by the state governments as they cannot cast their vote in their destination city. The second reason highlighted in the article is that poor migrants are termed as illegal, and because of being designated as being illegal, the poor migrant workers are not provisioned basic facilities and are not recognized by the state, and are sometimes labeled as being criminals and are then exploited by the state regulatory system, such as the police, local officials, among others, who then exploit the poor migrants for bribes. The third vulnerability highlighted in the article is that poor migrants are neglected to slum areas. And these slum areas, as to which the poor migrants have been neglected to, are then further considered as encroachment to the urban population. So now hopefully up till here you've understood the three basic vulnerabilities that have been highlighted in the article with regards to poor interstate migrants. Wherein the first vulnerability is that poor interstate migrants face an indifferent government in their destination city, wherein these poor migrants are neglected by the state government as they are not considered as a voting bloc, and because of which they have not been provided the basic facilities that should have been provided by the state, such as housing, educational opportunities, among other forms of basic facilities. And apart from this, the interstate migrants are also designated as being illegal, and therefore they're not able to take advantage of the basic facilities that have been provided by the government, wherein they're not able to register for cheap housing by the state government, they're not able to undertake educational scholarships, health protection schemes that are provided by various state governments, since they are not resident of that state. And apart from this, interstate migrants are also labeled as being criminals and thereby exploited by the regulatory system. And lastly, poor interstate migrants are neglected to slum areas because affordable and clean housing is not provided to them by the state government. And these slum areas are then labeled as encroachment by the state government. And therefore, there is a constant fear of demolition of their homes and their livelihood. So now hopefully you have understood the various vulnerabilities that have been highlighted in the article for poor interstate migrants. So now with regards to UPSC syllabus, now this article and the explanation given in this section would be placed in GS paper 2 within the section Social Justice. And within the subsection, it highlights the vulnerabilities of interstate migrants as vulnerable sections, wherein the article does not provide any welfare schemes by the center and states for interstate migrants. And so the article and the explanation given in this section should be considered from the partial perspective of the concerns with regards to interstate migrants as vulnerable sections. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken the lead editorial from page 8, wherein what this article talks about is that begging was a criminal offense as per the Bombay Prevention of Begging Act of 1959, and this act was also extended to the Union Territory of Delhi, wherein this act provided for the prevention of begging, the detention, training and employment of beggars and their dependents meaning their families, in certain institutions. And apart from this act also provided for the custody, trial, and punishment of beggars. However, in a recent judgment, the Delhi High Court has decriminalized the act of begging. And the Delhi High Court judgment in the Harsh Mandar vs. Union of India case and Karnika Swahani vs. Union of India case, the Delhi High Court held that the Begging Act violated Article 14, wherein Article 14 states equality before law. And in similar terms, the Delhi High Court also held that the Begging Act violated Article 21, which is the right to life and personal liberty, wherein, according to the High Court, the definition of begging that was given under the Begging Act was arbitrary in nature and it criminalized begging. Wherein, according to the High Court, it is the state's responsibility under Article 21 of the Constitution of India to provide basic necessities for survival, such as food, clothing, shelter, to all citizens. And this provision of basic necessities has to be provided to all citizens without any discrimination. Wherein, according to the High Court, poverty in India is the result of state's inability or unwillingness to discharge its obligations under Article 21, wherein the state has been unable to provide the basic necessities for survival to several Indian citizens, such as in food, clothing, shelter, and this has resulted in poverty in India. And the state cannot hide its failure by criminalizing begging, wherein begging is a form of survival by asking for food or clothing, and it is the state's inability to provide such basic facilities to individuals in India that vulnerable people resort to begging, and the state should provide them basic necessities rather than criminalizing their means of survival, which in this case is begging. Now, what is required for you to understand from this article is the social aspect of the decriminalization of the act of begging. And it is within that context that you should remember that the Begging Act violated Article 14 and Article 21 of the Constitution of India. Now, the social aspect of the decriminalization of the act of begging would be placed in GS paper 2 within the section Social Justice, within the subsection Laws for the Protection and Betterment of Vulnerable Sections, and in similar terms, it would also be placed in issues relating to poverty. And so, now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now, we have taken this article from page 13, wherein what this article provides is the trends in FDI inflows into India. And we'll try to analyze this article from the perspective of your UPSC prelims examination. And this is because previously questions have been asked in your prelims examination on the prevailing trends in economics, wherein a question was asked in the prelims of 2018 on the trend on real GNP and its relation with economic development. But this question was asked in the prelims of 2017, which had asked the trends in India's agriculture, India's export, India's FDI inflows, and India's foreign exchange reserves. And similarly, a question was asked in the prelims of 2015 with regards to the trend in real GDP growth in India and the trends in GDP at market prices. And it is within that similar context that we'll try to understand this article from the perspective of your prelims examination as to in which form the article provides information on the prevailing trends in foreign direct investment. Wherein the first point made in the article is that FDI inflows in India is largely based upon India's economic growth. And in similar terms, if you take a look from 2015 to 2017, there has been high GDP growth rate and an increase in FDI inflows, wherein the year 2012 had low GDP growth rate and low FDI inflows. And so, according to the author, a high GDP growth rate in India is followed by an increase in FDI inflows into India. The second point made by the author in the article is that larger the economy and the consumer base of a country, higher is the FDI inflows. Wherein the third point made in the article is that FDI inflows are equally dependent domestic economic prospects and global financial markets. And the fourth and the last point made in the article is that FDI inflows into India has consistently increased, wherein the FDI inflows was on an average of $5 billion from 1998 to 2002, which increased to $12 billion from 2002 to 2007, which again increased to $34 billion from 2007 to 2012, to around $38 billion in the last 5 years. And so, according to the author, the FDI inflows into India has consistently increased on a 5-year basis. wherein there might have been a fluctuations on an year-on-year basis, but if taken on a 5-year basis, FDI inflows into India has consistently increased. So now hopefully you've understood the trends in FDI inflows into India, wherein high GDP growth rate in India is followed by an increase in FDI inflows, wherein FDI inflows into India has consistently increased on a 5-year basis, while there may have been fluctuations on a year-on-year basis. And apart from this, according to the author, the higher the economy and consumer market, the higher is the FDI inflows into a country, wherein the FDI inflows are equally dependent upon the domestic economy and the global financial markets. So now hopefully you've understood the various trends with regards to FDI inflows into India. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we've taken this article from page 12. Now what we need to remember from this article is the location of the city of Ghazni from the perspective of your prelims examination. Now you should understand that questions which are asked in the prelims examination within the section Geography of the World, wherein if you take a look at the questions that were asked in the prelims of 2018 on world geography, such as the region of Catalonia in Spain, the city of Aleppo in Syria, the city of Kirkuk in Iraq, the city of Mazar-e-Sharif in Afghanistan. These regions or these towns had some current event which was of international importance, wherein if you take an example of Catalonia, it was in news for international importance because of the Catalonian referendum. Similarly, the region of Crimea in Ukraine, but is now under the control of Russia, was in the news for international importance because of the Russian invasion. Similarly, the city of Kirkuk was in the news for international importance because of the Kurdish referendum. And it is within this context that any city or any region which is asked in the prelims examination within the subsection of Geography of the World generally have some current event which has occurred in that city or region which was of international importance. And one of the ways as to understand which region or which city that you should remember for your prelims examination is to highlight the various cities that appear in the headlines of the Hindu newspaper or the Indian Express or any other newspaper that you subscribe to. And it is within that context that you should remember that the city of Ghazni is in Afghanistan. And you should remember this fact from the perspective of your prelims examination.
And now with this, we come to an end in the analysis of today's newspaper. Now we move on to the question for today.